So I'm Craig Jeffery, the Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. We're a Treasury consulting firm. And it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce you to Benjaminsen from FIS. Hello, Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Bent, before we get into the topics, what area do you cover for FIS?
Yeah, I'm the Global Product Manager for Corporate Treasury and Payments. So we're dealing with all the treasuries into the multinationals around the world, but also to treasuries of banks.
Okay, so treasuries of banks, some very treasury-intensive organizations. So FIS, so for anybody who's a corporate is probably going to know FIS more of Sungard. So Sungard was acquired by FIS. Sungard, a huge provider of collection products, treasury products, payment solutions that they have. So that was acquired. So that's the first thing we want to talk about, is we're about 1 year into the acquisition of Sungard by FIS. So how has that gone? How has that changed things? You were owned by private equity, now you're owned by a large organization that has a lot of banking. What are the key things that you've learned through that transition, and how should we think about it?
Yeah, I think one of the things we saw in our group, we came into FIS as the corporate treasury group, which didn't exist in FIS prior to the acquisition, so we were a truly value-added service for them. And I think what we are seeing coming with FIS is, especially in North America, FIS has a very deep relationship with a lot of regional banks, a lot of credit unions, long, deep standing relationships, and I think a lot of those banks are looking to offer up treasury services to their customers. So for us, it has been a great entry into being able to offer those services up. I think also if I compare to the Sungard world, especially the last 10 years as a private equity, I think FIS is focusing a lot on innovation. As a matter of fact, last week we announced the Byway initiative, which is a cardless transaction that takes the merchant, the consumer, and also loyalty programs into one transaction. So you can go to the gas station, you can fill up your car, pay for everything, all in one transaction on your phone. We have a whole team out in San Francisco, which we call the Garage, who is just speculating in new initiatives coming up. And for us in the corporate space, getting access to a lot of that bank innovation and technology, I think is helping us with what we are doing. One of the things we've been focusing on over the years is centralization around payment hubs. But despite the centralization of payment hubs, fraud is still something that happens. More and more cybersecurity is happening. And one of the things we're looking to gain out of it is having our corporate payment software, the payment behavior detection and fraud. So just like you get on a credit card, where you get a text message one morning saying, hey, were you in Miami? There was a transaction on your card. We can now adopt that technology into our corporate payment software. So you can now create a profile. Is this the first time you're paying a vendor in this country over this amount? So we can start looking at the behavior of the payments rather than just looking at it as a centralization of a process. So I think merging those, that banking technology FIS had, the banking relationships they had, and the innovation they focused on, with our corporate focus over the last, I've been with them for 20 years, I think it's a perfect match for our group.
So do you think? Yeah. So the idea of this monitoring fraud, any type of anomalous behaviors is very interesting and a great topic. But just thinking about FIS, this banking giant, and the corporate world, you see there's some synergies there. How do you see that playing out in terms of product development, investment in the area, over time?
Yeah, one of the first things we got underway was, again, FIS's footprint in the regional local banks in North America. A lot of them are struggling with getting access to something like a Swift service bureau. So a lot of the smaller banks don't have the infrastructure they can do. Our corporate Swift service bureau infrastructure is now something we're engaging a lot of those FIS banks in how to deploy. So again, they can go to their customers and offer much broader service at a whole different infrastructure point.
So should a corporate client look at that as you're bringing the product set and suite that FIS offered to banks to corporates?
Well, if you look at our corporates, where corporates are benefiting, if you look at some of the larger corporations and you look at some of the banks who are using, in this case, our treasury software, banks give our software a whole different footprint in the case of compliance. and risk management. So that's what the banks are giving us as a corporate customer, so to speak, is access into more of that kind of technology. So that's good for us when we can see corporate and banks sort of merging on the technology side. And equally the banks are getting access to a lot of the corporate solutions that we are offering up to our corporates. So
Right. So shifting a little to the other side of our conversation, we wanted to talk about what is your strategy going forward for Treasury technology, for how you serve particularly the corporate market, but you can also weigh in on the banking Treasury market. Both are related. So what should we be looking for from you? What are you thinking the audience, your recipients of the solutions you have should get?
Yeah, I think if we look at a survey we just released last week, one of the things from our corporate customers that are still on their forefront is still cash management and liquidity management. I don't think that's ever going to go away. There's still a need for centralization. There's still a push for Treasury to be more strategic. Some of our very large corporations, they're coming to us and say, we want to act almost as a bank within the corporation. So what are some of the banking services that you sell to your banks that can service customers? They want, as a corporation within Treasury, to consume those services out internally in their organization. So I think that's not necessarily something new, but we're now seeing that kind of merger between the very large corporates and how they run Treasury, and with a lot of services that we see banks offering. Risk management, I think, is a topic that is relevant as ever. The survey, we had 76% of corporations have documented their risk management policies, but more than 60% don't feel like it's really adequate. So they spend a lot of time documenting it, they spend a lot of time getting their arms around it, but as far as the effectiveness of it, I think our survey indicate that a lot of corporations are questioning, does it live up to the effectiveness that it needs to do? And then obviously from a technology standpoint, how we deploy our software, whether it's a cloud-based solution, whether it's installed solution, again, market segmentation will differentiate that. We have smaller banks who want more of a cloud-based service because they don't have the infrastructure, the IT. And then we have very large corporations who still like to have everything in-house. And I think what we're seeing with cybersecurity is a good probably reason for that. I think there's still a lot of skepticism out there about what is cybersecurity going to do in this space.
Now you have a number of products that touch on core Treasury management,
yes.
Integrity, Quantum. You also have collection enabling tools like Get Paid,
yes.
that you have, and payments as well. Are those going to be combined onto the same delivery channel or platform in the cloud? Are you just going to, what are your plans on any type of integration or efficiency between your product sets as you look at all of Treasury? Where do you see that going?
Well, I think it's going to continue as something, so all those products, whether it's a payment, our collection, our Treasury, are within the same group. So they're all under the same umbrella within FIS, and we will continue to enhance that connectivity, especially around Treasury and payments. Obviously, as far as collection and disbursement, reconciliation, those are all processes that are happening many places within a corporation. If you go around a corporation and see how many places do they perform reconciliation, that is done in many different places. So again, getting a centralized function there. So we will continue to push into those spaces. Obviously, if you look at the collection of money, that is quite often a more distributed local activity for a large multinational, whereas Treasury is said to be more centralized. At least the risk management, the foreign exchange, the hedging tend to be more centralized. So we have to respect that from a disbursement and collection, a lot of that is happening out in the field, whereas Treasury become more centralized, and it's bridging that gap between when do you stop centralizing and when do you keep that close connection with your customers and your vendors and suppliers. And that's where I think technology is a great tool and a gateway to bridge that gap.
So let's talk just for a couple moments on what you think are the big issues in each area. So let's think about payments. What are the big issues? What are your customers asking for you with regard to payments?
Well, they're still embarking, I would say for the last 10 years, they're still embarking on centralization. That is obviously a key, making sure that just the disbursement of money within a corporation is centralized. Again, part of it is visibility, and that's, I think, is the number one forefront, is they've got to make sure they have the money in the right place, in the right currency at the right time. But also, if you start looking at the large multinationals or even smaller companies that may have 5, 6, 7 disbursement systems for cash. They don't want to have 5 interfaces to the same bank out of 5 different systems. So the centralization that started 5, 6, 7 years ago in technology is still very much happening. I think what may not have lived up to the expectation, if you go back to AFP 5, 6, 7 years ago, where we're all going to have one standardized payment interface and the whole world we're going to use that unique standard interface. As a pure technology vendor, I think that hasn't quite transpired yet, that we're all going to be on one unified payment interface, but there's a push for it. But I think it's going as slow as one would have expected. So in the payment, we see that, but I think the whole fraud and cybersecurity is where the next emphasis is going to be. Now that we centralize the payment, now that we can see all the payments going to a certain bank, we've got all the approval processes, we can validate that the big code is correct. Now comes back to the fraud pattern. Have we paid this vendor before? Are we typically doing business in this country? Why is this the first time we're doing a payment over $50,000 in this particular country? That's where we start learning at the payment pattern and the behavior. And I think that's what we are excited about from a product standpoint, is taking some of that consumer credit card technology and build into the corporate payments.
So it's no longer payments and we have some type of sanction filtering and tracking and reconciliation, but we also add some kind of behavioral analysis, anything that's anomalous.
Yeah, you have to, because you have to start and predict, because once the money has left and it's into some of these countries, it's impossible to get back. So again, start looking at is this a normal behavior for us as a company to do these kind of payments? So that's where we're focusing a lot.
Okay. So related to, let's call it connectivity, the idea of connecting to all of your banks. If you're a corporate, you want to get all the information from all your banks across the globe. You want to be able to send payments out, payment hub. What do you see as are the trends there and key things that we should be looking at?
I think that is still the holy grail that's being pursued by many corporates. But I think it's not so much having it centralized. I think also we see a lot of corporates start having fewer and fewer banking relationships and make them more strategic. So that in and by itself would potentially foster a more centralized approach to it. But yeah, I mean, that will always be there. Again, key is you've got to get access to your liquidity. You've got to know where it is before you know how to disperse it. And obviously there's a lot of regulations around the 385 as far as how companies for tax benefits can now move money around. So I think that will potentially be the next push into what companies haven't necessarily done it, use some services to consolidate, will be forced to embark on it probably more aggressively.
Okay, and how about core treasury systems? I mean, you have a suite and a range of products that you've gone. Kind of, you have the pure SaaS offering. You have Integrity delivered over a SaaS platform and also installed, and then you have Quantum. Are those going to merge together?
No. I think we have to appreciate that we have a very diverse market. We have some very large corporations who want their software installed. We have companies that has, let's say, 150 interfaces around the Treasury workstation. They don't want to necessarily get that software updated without their notice, yesterday. They are depending on doing payroll to Asia Pacific. They need to understand if anything has changed. There's very strict compliance around software. And then we have a segment of the market who likes to have the software deployed as a SaaS. What we are seeing is it's not so much we got small companies on one and big companies on the other. We have some very large insurance companies on Integrity, for instance, and we have some small companies on Quantum. So it's not so much about big versus small. It's what is it you're trying to achieve, and how do you want to achieve it for a company? So for us, it's a matter of being able to service both spectrum of the market.
Excellent. All right. So to any final thoughts on where are people? Where are your customers? Your corporate banking corporate clients, where are they spending money on at the greatest level? Where are you seeing the greatest level of growth and on the sales side?
I think what we're seeing more of is when we look at our customers spending on software versus consulting services. I think a lot of treasuries want to be seen more as an internal consulting group. They want to be more strategic. So we actually have a very big growth in our consulting services to not just implement the software, but also help train the customer to be a consultant inside the company itself. So I think that's the whole people side of the business. I think it's being more appreciated. I think if we look at some of the, again, over 20 years, you look at some of the people who work in Treasury today, It used to be the high-end customer hired bankers, but now you're seeing that trickling down throughout the smaller corporations. So I think that the staffing level, I think in Treasury is really going up. I'm really excited about the people, the customers we have, and the people we meet.
So consulting services is number one. Now is, what would be the number two? Collection, disbursement, treasury, connectivity?
Cash management with whatever that means. That could mean centralization of payment, it could mean centralization of bank statements, but everything around risk management and liquidity management is still number one. Now it's about getting it faster, getting it quicker. We don't just want prior day balances, we want to pull intraday balances, not just once a day. Why not have it more readily accessible? So I think that's, technology help us deliver that vision. It's always been there, but technology hasn't necessarily been there to do it. And that's where how you deploy the software, how you deploy the services are coming in. And I think third is we see a lot of companies who don't just want us to do connectivity, but they want us to help do the monitoring of it.
Right.
And make them know, well, hold on, why did I not get the bank statement? Is there something unusual about the rates that I got? Are there some variations in the rate feeds we're getting that would lend me to have an abnormal position management? Because quite often they don't necessarily see it until they start reporting it. So again, looking across our customer base, we have the ability to look at again, certain behaviors. And that's the key here, is to try and predict and prevent rather than being reactive to, oh, we didn't get the data, or it was a corrupted file, or something like that.
Finding information out earlier and predictive management. Excellent. So as we kind of come to a close in discussion, we wanted to open up any questions that you have for FIS or Sungard products, or anything that anybody has that they'd like to ask. You would be the first person asking a question at one of our FinTech hot seats. So I do. Okay, go ahead, Boris.
What do you see in faster payments, same day ACH?
Yeah.
So let me restate the question for the recording. So what do you see in faster payments, same day ACH? Yeah, et cetera.
Well, we have again more and more banks coming to us asking us what our corporates are going to do, what do they do. Yes, it's a topic. The whole CLS seem to be back emerging again. So anything that is faster, same day, has always been a drive, and I think that's again where technology is going to help. But yes, we do have seen an increase in that requirement. I don't think anybody quite know exactly how and what to do with it, but it is a topic that keeps coming up. But it's like, back many years ago, we were here talking about we have this unified payment format. Well, it's going to look like, well, we don't know yet, but we're going to have it, right? So it's the good news is the talk is there. It's a talk amongst the right players, but now everybody has to sort of find a way to execute on it.
Like in blockchain.
Sorry?
Like in blockchain.
Yep.
Like in blockchain. Okay.
Blockchain, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.